1 between these two amazing Terran players. It's going to be on Kairos Junction. We got some European Terran versus Korean Terran. But let's be real, as far as Terrans go, they typically all follow the Koreans. Perhaps, maybe not. Maybe uThermal will have some special European tactics, or, well, maybe he's just better than Bunny. I'm gonna say that Bunny has a bit of a lead for me anyways. In my mind, I'm thinking that Bunny might take this best of 3 overall, but I really have high hopes that uThermal will. I'm not gonna lie, I'm cheering for this guy in the bottom right, the red Terran. It is uThermal. In the top left, as the blue Terran, he is Bunny. Now, uThermal was in Korea for quite a while, recently returning to Europe, so this is the preferred server for him. I didn't swap over to Korea or anything. And it is still kind of true, as I was saying. Like, while the European Terrans have their own style, I don't know if they really do... Well, no, I can't say that. They have their own style in all the matchups. A lot of the time, it is, you know, about copying the Korean Terran replays and figuring out, can I successfully pull this off or can't I? But styles can be more to the game than mechanics sometimes. You saw here Marine in Montreal up against Time. Time is basically a Korean player. Plays in the Korean server, lives in Korea multiple times, plays like a Korean player. And here Marine just got out-styled on. It wasn't necessarily his mechanics being worse or that he was, you know, totally oblivious to the things that Time could do. It's just that it would, by the time, you know, the European scene had gotten to X meta, the Korean scene was still on Y meta, or was up to the next meta, or so on and so forth. So, for instance, Cyclones ended up giving here Marine a bit of trouble when, you know, a couple months prior to Montreal, maybe they would not have. So, style can mean a lot. I feel like uThermal, after being in Korea and actually having a lot of practice against Terrans, which is a problem on the European server, as far as I understand it, should be pretty identical to what we'd expect if we're watching, for instance, the League TVT, which happens a lot. So it should come down to who is just better decision-making here. Maybe we have a couple of, you know, those weird instant GGs after 5-6 minute tank pushes type deals. Maybe someone snowballs with their Reapers, sure, but I think it's more going to go to the mid-game. Who has the better drops? Who has the better reads on where their opponent will go? Will we see mech? Will we see bio? I'm going to guess bio for both players, but Bunny has been showing us some mech in his TVZ. Perhaps we'll bring it to TVT as well. I'll talk directly about the build orders they're doing currently. uThermal does have his command center only just starting, whereas Bunny went for that 1-Rax command center. He's getting a bunker, which is a very safe move, and uThermal has been unable to do anything with his opener quite yet. So even though it's certainly possible to do so, especially if you get a bit of a bump up with the first Reaper harassment, it just simply hasn't happened. I guess I should also note, I was talking a lot about styles. I should also note that uThermal does literally have home field advantage. He is in Europe. And in TVT, especially in the early game TVT, that micro could be poor for Bunny, just because he has the delay. You know, you won't pull the Reaper back in time after a 2-rack, suddenly you're in deep doo-doo. But Kairos Junction, not really, I mean, I guess it's okay, Reaper man. But uThermal's not trying to abuse that. He is going to abuse just running past the bunker, though. He's got enough units that even if he had lost one, it still would have been a nice bit of damage on the SCV line. This isn't anything too significant, but it does do some decent scouting. Bunny seeing a Raven, forcing an auto turret too, and doesn't even kill the damn Reaper. She sees the exact timing of the command center and what the follow-up to the Raven is, and it is going to be Vikings, which is a very, very, very important thing to note. So while uThermal is an eye mining over here, he might be overstaying his welcome. They're not exactly important as the late game or mid game even goes, but they can be helpful. Looks like he's gonna get a couple of last shots on the SCVs, but not quite take any out. Got very, very close to doing so. He's gonna go for a last-second scout into the main base. Doesn't see much. Just saw the barracks in the factory, and of course the Raven that was hovering over it. Not much else. But uThermal, I don't think he's quite worried about whether it's mech or bio yet. Obviously, it's nice to tell, because when I was talking about this reactor being very important, why is it so important? The difference between someone going for Stim already and just getting a decent number of barracks and someone who is reactoring out Vikings this early is the difference between someone going for maybe a decent 2 medevac drop versus someone who's going to get across the map, siege up, and put you in a very difficult position. That's what uThermal is going to be looking to do. Now, it can be tricky, you know, especially, you know, how greedy is your opponent being. Bunny not being too greedy, doesn't already have a 3rd command center on the way. In fact, already has his 2 barracks instead. Might just have enough army to tackle this prior to uThermal being quite sieged up yet. And that's the real trick to some of these pushes, you know? The Viking tank combination will leave you, I guess, with dominating positioning. But you have to get across the map first and actually siege up your damn units. And now that I'm gonna watch this unfold, uThermal not quite pushing out. Okay. I was gonna say, like, I don't think it's quite worth it. Let's assume he's going to go to mech and play a macro game from here on out. Sure. I was wondering if he was just going to stay at home with this, and I'm like, I don't think it's really worth it to get this many Vikings if you're going to play defensive. Okay, he does push out. So Bunny should know about this, that scout in the reactor really is a seriously big deal. And he's going to go ahead and send a Marine forward to see the exact timing of this, too. And it's only 2 Marines, he also sees the Viking. That's enough of a tell to say, okay, that army is coming across the map. Does Bunny have enough to take this on? He did not try and meet it head first. He put his tanks forward a lot because the Raven would have made that insufficient anyways. So he's forced to just keep retreating, or not keep retreating, keep defensive. And he might have had to retreat even further should the Raven have used its interference matrix on the tanks. But instead, there was positioning up to the top side that uThermal thought he was going to get the better of, but not really. I guess technically he did get the better of, but not to the extent that he was hoping for. Definitely hoping that Bunny didn't have a tank up there. Certainly hoping that his Raven would have contributed more to the engagement. Instead, doesn't have too many tanks. Literally now 2 tanks as he rallies 1 forward to continue abusing this position. I guess this ends up going favorably for uThermal. I was a little scared because he had basically no ground army, but Bunny's production hasn't really kicked in quite yet. So even though he was left with a decent number of Marines and his own tank down here, he was unable to wrap around and get the surround he was looking for. So uThermal gets quite a few shots, does hold on to this positioning for now, but I think he'll have to read into this and maybe move away soon. Instead, he just moves forward. He's rallying forward, too, and that's not usual for someone who's doing this style. It's not going mech. He does have Sim on the way, but this style is still all about positioning. You don't have a lot of Marines to cover your tanks, and eventually, especially if Bunny got combat shields, he may be able to break this. But that was certainly very awkward. Bunny lets a large portion of his army die before the rest of it comes around the side, and that was just not ideal whatsoever. Bunny's going to lose a lot to deal with this. This tank somehow survives. Vikings can't quite reach that. But now the Vikings are going to be on top of the SCVs, and they do bonus damage to mechanical. Luckily, a couple of Marines pop out, a tank pops out. 5 SCVs total died, but I think more importantly, uThermal was able to stall out that starport production, get a lot of army down with that attack, and overall got a much faster 3rd CC. So that is really where he's looking quite strong. Bunny even made a 2nd starport. Is that what happened? Yeah, I guess he assumed this was going to be lost. That's a little awkward. uThermal has that faster 3rd. Can he hold on to it? I'm thinking so. He took out enough of Bunny's army that counterattack that could certainly have happened if Bunny was able to stomp the tanks a little bit faster, a little bit harder. It would have been difficult to hold. I don't think it's going to be that difficult to hold anymore. Liberator gets a couple more Marines. I thought that was really worth it. It also sees the army is, in fact, still back on Bunny's side of the map, and uThermal doesn't have to quite worry about being countered. I mean, his army's really not that impressive, and he's missing a lot of Marines to help cover multiple locations. So you see the center tower that maybe is a little faster than normal, maybe. We even have a bunker on the front lines. He is taking this seriously, because now he's also figuring out that not only did he do damage, force Bunny into a weird position, he's figuring out that it's probably going to be a 2-base attack with a very late 3rd CC. As Liberated passed by, this Nittency already building. There's a 3rd CC on Bunny's mind, obviously. There we go. But Bunny's the one that's had bio production for longer and certainly has the mobility. uThermal has to take everything seriously until he has his own solid number of Marines, which is going to be very, very soon. This looks like everything's lined up for uThermal to win this game. 9 Marines at a time, a decent amount of tanks that are spread out with a center tower to cover, drops in the main base as well as attacks on the 3rd. And otherwise, you just have to worry about this position here. He also has a missile turret to help out in case he lost the Viking war, which I guess he technically already did. Oh, no, he didn't. He has 2 Vikings. Okay. So that's not even a worry. Liberators would not have given him that much trouble. But even though Bunny showed his hand up to the natural ramp, he ends up going to the third. Bunker doesn't last very long. Center Tower will be taken out. The Vikings now come into play there. Okay, they were looking for a drop to the main. And they'll be able to push back Bunny's lone, weak Viking. And that'll give uThermal that air control. It'll give him the vision. Bunny will have to start scanning. Very efficient trade there with the medevac drop on top of the 2 tanks. Very, very nicely done. uThermal does lose a couple of SCVs to the Marines off to the side, but was that enough for Bunny to say that was good for me? How about for you? Nah, it wasn't good for Bunny. It wasn't. This Liberator tried to duck in and then didn't do very much. I'm not sure why, but I'm pretty sure it was over here. He might assume that it was going to be reacted to. One of those. I think my opponent's good enough to react to that, so. It's still hovering around, and it still could do damage. Another Sensor Tower is on the way. uThermal's still not playing around with the defense here. If he continues defending, he will have the stronger economy. He'll have the better upgrades. He'll have the better tank count, too. He goes to the concave on top of Bunny's army, but the tanks were siege, dealing a lot of damage to uThermal. This is not all of uThermal's army. He still has his medevacs alive. He still has his Vikings alive. And Liberator comes. Oh, it actually came forward to defend, to help take out that tank. One weird tank over here was misrallied, I suppose, and it will lose its life for that. But uThermal is seeing an opportunity to push forward here to win the game. If he holds against this, I think he would. Even though Bunny has a third, it's not very efficient. Zoinks. There you go. But even if it's mining, it's still not very efficient. His uThermal has been on almost 60 workers for the majority of this defense. And will soon get all of his gases should he need it, like once he can afford a second factory, I suppose. And he has officially held, will now have much faster 2-2-1 upgrades. And should be protected with the Sensor Tower popping up again. Well, this is TVT, and as good as uThermal looks here, really nice read in situation, didn't take anything too lightly. Nice tank push in the early game. As good as it looks from here on out, this is TVT, and Bunny could do a Doom drop that is spectacular. He could do a nice tank defense that uThermal does finally get overconfident, something he hasn't done yet, but could certainly happen. I know uThermal made one of those pro gamer kind of depressed tweets. Depressed isn't the right word. He's making fun of himself in his tweet. Seems like he thought he should have won his position in the upper bracket, but instead lost special. So. I think that would have humbled him, and he's not going to make the same mistake twice, especially in the same matchup. 4cc, funnily enough, might have been canceled, or killed straight up. The Viking was doing a lot of damage. This drop is mostly defended against, but the SCVs kind of die unnecessarily, maybe? They went first, so they're definitely going to die. Bunny now down 20 overall workers and down in the upgrades. 2-2 versus 1-1 and no upgrades on the way. If you're going to give up something in TVT, I guess upgrades would make sense, but not because they're not important. They're actually very important. But that usually it's tanks that bring you back from a supply deficit, not necessarily upgraded Marines. You're going to kind of assume that your opponent's also getting upgraded Marines. Whereas even if they have the same number of tanks, it's still hard to break you if you have a dozen tanks. Not that Bunny has really done any better about producing tanks. I mean, they're both still on one factory. But if he can keep tabs on where uThermal is, hopefully his tank count continues to rise slowly but surely. And even uThermal with a higher supply and better upgrades will be able to break him. Now, uThermal, when he realizes that's Bunny's plan, could just go into Liberators, Liberator range, Viking control, all that good stuff. But hasn't seen the necessity yet, too. I mean, he's getting some Vikings, but no Liberators quite yet. This drop was basically necessary for Bunny to try, but it does not work out. Every single medevac taken out, down heavily in supply now. The one little bright side is that the tanks weren't used in a drop like that, so maybe you could still defend even after that fails. Maybe, but not likely. We're getting close to uThermal being maxed out. It's going to happen very soon as the production is really ramping up. He does concave on top of the tanks, but Bunny had so many. Actually, he concaves very well, ends up getting almost a full surround, so that is going to be the game. Even if it wasn't, Bunny would have known he was dead. That was his only army, and he was mostly dead. Even if the Marines hadn't gotten such a good concave. GG! Bunny. Now down a game. It's currently... Ooh, lordy. It's currently 3:30 in the morning in Korea. And he's had some wonky schedules. He was playing yesterday in the European server qualifier. Staying up very late for that. He played in the Lima League, which means that he was playing in the evening and is now into tomorrow in Korea. So his sleep schedule's got to be all over the place. He might have gotten away with things against Bly with some TVZ mech. Maybe could play a little slower. Maybe could compensate for the ping a little bit. But TVT, not the same beast. Even if you go mech, I don't know if it's any easier. Especially because, you know, TVZ maybe a lot of the games you kind of get that first 6-7 minutes where you're like, I'm not going to be attacked unless he all-ins, right? TVT, no. Like, even if your plan is to ultimately get to mech and turtle really hard and hope to God that things go your way, even if you want to get there eventually, you still have to deal with all the 1 base, 2 base attack shenanigans that can happen. Proxy's still going to be a real threat here. Even a little surprising that uThermal hasn't tried, as we do not see an SCV on the way. So, no proxies from him. He's still up 1 in the top right as the red Terran. It is a liquid uThermal. The bottom left is the blue Terran. It is Blazer's Bunny. I'm not sure what Bunny does differently. I thought he was going to have an okay position to break uThermal's tank push, but that didn't end up happening. As okay as it kind of looked with only 1 tank and a lot of Vikings left over, it still lasted a long time. Second tank came up surprisingly. Vikings landed a lot of damage. It lasted longer than I thought it would. Somewhat due to Bunny's awkward, like, you know, 7 units running forward way before the others. But also just because he was unable to stop uThermal from gaining that position as much as he tried. So my point here is kind of like, I don't know, there's nothing super obvious that Bunny could have done better. I'm sure if you really hyperanalyze the game, you could say, well, his barracks were, you know, 20 seconds late, and his tank production stalled out, and he got supply block for a second, and sure, okay, yeah, of course. But there wasn't really anything too obvious in a macro game, too. So it's not like you can just kind of forget about a cheese game. Like, it was a macro game, it was a decent game, and Bunny just simply fell behind to some very standard stuff that he even scouted. So that's also something that you can't just be like, oh, I didn't scout it, so it's no big deal. Like, Bunny should be kind of sweating bullets here. He's at a disadvantage time-wise. He's at a disadvantage server-wise. And even if he wasn't, uThermal has been able to really showcase some very good TVT against Koreans. Actually, let's bring up last year's IEM Katowice. He was able to do that versus Innovation in an offline tournament. Sure, that was where everyone started to say that Innovation was in a slump, and Innovation 2018 wasn't super great. I know, but uThermal still had some very good TVT up against the Koreans. So Bunny should be feeling a little worried. Everything I just said really makes it sound like uThermal should 2-0 here, but at the beginning of the series, I was like, I think Bunny's gonna take this. I'm reevaluating, I'm learning here, but I still would consider Bunny a strong TVTer, just with the amount of practice he gets on Korea. And I would still give him a chance to bring back this series. But if uThermal 2-0s, all the reasons I just stated, plus all of his practice in Korea very recently, and just in general being a very good player, would add up to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense as well. Stock standard stuff here. uThermal, I believe, goes for a similar build as last game. Factory expand, at least, this time. Another Raven. Could defend against Banshees. Could defend against if Bunny was doing his own 1 base 1-1-1. And while he doesn't get too aggressive with his first few units right off the bat, he does eventually get aggressive, something that Bunny had a little bit of difficulty handling last game. This time he doesn't have a bunker, but he is going to have a Cyclone. Yeah, it just popped out. Now, Cyclone does some serious DPS, but there's a lot of units here. Yeah, not worth it for uThermal. Maybe if all the Marines were, like, clumped up and a grenade would have CC'd all of them, then sure, but not worth it up a ramp especially. This Reaper was a bigger bother. Kills 2 SCVs, stalls out 2 buildings. That third gas geyser almost looks like a drone trying to be saved, but uThermal just really wants to very quickly get to 3 gases. And if he's going to do the same push as last game, that makes total sense. That's exactly what he's going to do. It's not a build that really can be punished too harshly. especially if you know your opponent's already on 2 bases. Like, maybe if Bunny was a 1 base Terran, he was doing something kind of wonky, maybe you'd run up against the odd number of units finding in the middle of the map. But generally, this build is a standard enough one that you can kind of steal this and have maybe better success in your own TVTs. But there certainly are situations where we see them lose track of the Raven, lose a couple of key units like a tank to a Cyclone that's out on the map, for instance. That certainly happened. And we have seen the defending player try and go into their own Vikings and eventually win the air war with the Defender's advantage and force this to really be nipped in the bud. You know, if you can stop them from getting up into a decent position on top of your ramp, on top of your production, then eventually the attacking player, in this case uThermal, does just kind of pack up and go home. So the Cyclone's probably doing exactly what I was talking about, looking for a good snipe on a tank, or hell, even the Raven that goes forward a little too far. But since uThermal saved all those Hellion and Reapers from the early game, he was able to take it out no problem. And that's 1 less unit to help on the true defense, not even just trying to find it in the middle of the map. No longer has it here to even get that pesky little lock on. What is uThermal going to use positioning-wise? He's going to scout. Not that Hellion saw a ton. He's going to go right up to that bunker. Bunny's going to have much faster stim, and he will have combat shields at a decent time, much like last game. But I believe he broke uThermal before combat shields. Maybe that contributed to his loss. And he also had that very awkward time trying to save his starport. Not this time, though. Not this time. Nothing's quite in danger production-wise. Even... he even does a drop behind uThermal's reinforcements, and this is really, really, really good. I mean, this could have also gone for the SCVs and done a lot of good damage. The finding the tank, finding the Viking is really good stuff here. Now, Bunny, maybe he was purposely target firing the Raven, goes a little too far forward, and does get a lot of Marines blasted there. Auto turret is used to take out the tank. If Bunny had fully surrounded the tank, it would have been fine, but wasn't quite quick enough to do so. He's going to pull the SCVs into this. Marines coming from behind. Raven's got to get out of there if it wants to survive. And it might... Nope, not going to happen. You know what else doesn't survive? uThermal's tanks. His Vikings do, weirdly enough. They could try and walk away. That'd be the weirdest thing we've ever seen. Vikings walking over the Marines. Oh my god, it's actually going to happen? Oh my god. Huh. I mean, there weren't a lot of Marines left over, and again, they didn't have combat shields either, so I guess this number of Vikings, even though they don't do bonus damage versus Marines, were enough to handle it. I would not have called that. The uThermal appropriately, I'm literally trying not to start a coughing fit and die. I'm getting that hiccup in your voice where you know that if you keep on talking, your voice will get really raspy, so I'm trying to cut it off, and it's causing a lot of really weird pauses in my sentences, so sorry. But anyways, he was able to judge that correctly and is the better for it. A couple medevacs look like they're going to go for a fake drop / scout, which would be totally fine if there weren't 6 Vikings. 5 Vikings. It's a little dangerous. Okay. Yeah, that was really dangerous. Liberator comes into the main base of Bunny. He has his own Vikings, not quite in position, so he'll have to pull his SCVs or just lose a few. Did I just eat the mic? I'm pretty sure nothing has changed in my position to my mic in the last 3 minutes. So I don't know about that. Stim is finally on the way for uThermal. But that is certainly one of the benefits of Bunny's build, is that he has rather quick stim combat shields. And if he doesn't take damage, he even probably has faster upgrades. Since he took damage, maybe he's forgetting it, maybe he's purposefully not getting it. I'm not sure which one, but he's not starting +1 armor, so uThermal will eventually have that upgrade lead. Scan reveals that there's no units beneath those medevacs, so maybe he missed the full pickup. It's still kind of obvious what the plan is there. I'm thinking that's Bunny's scan to see if there's an army waiting for him. Maybe it's second uThermal scan, I'm not sure. I guess I should have checked the vision, that was my bad. But regardless of whose it was, the point is uThermal definitely scanned the medevacs and has his Vikings in position, of which he's able to save basically all of them. And as such, I'm really surprised that Bunny tries to do this, but he has his own Vikings trying to cover, and there's a decent number of them as well, but one medevac instantly getting sniped. I believe it was full of Marines. Not a bad start as we get into an oddly intense Viking war for bio versus bio. Oddly intense. uThermal absolutely slams Bunny's air count down to 0, keeping 7 of his own Vikings alive, and Bunny's ploy to do that doom drop does not work out in a really, really terrible way. uThermal already has his 3rd CC. Bunny, meanwhile, kind of almost going 2 base all in. Not totally, not truly, because he doesn't have 2 extra barracks, but it's because he can't afford them. If he can't afford 2 extra barracks, then he can't afford a 3rd CC. Last time we saw him prepare for one on location, which would help a little. And now I think he's just going to try and do the doom drop, and if it doesn't work, he's going to tap out. Sad way to end the qualifier, but it might just be the only way Bunny can end the qualifier. uThermal scans to see if the army is, it's a good guess where the army is. He also is scanning to see if the 3rd CC has started, probably, or has been lifted over. Not the case, and all things point to Bunny being quite desperate. uThermal does not have to send his 3rd CC out, and he's not doing so. Very, very cautious play from a player who certainly has in the past been weak to overconfidence, has been weak to his own, you know, too clever moves. He styles a little too much. Like, he has given away leads, and it's something that I think he's been working on since he started to really rise up as a dominant European Terran. And it's something he's already learned today in this qualifier facing Special, as seen by his tweets, so. I'm liking it, I'm liking it. It's a good call here. You know, in other games, this could backfire. You know, you take a very hot-headed Terran, bloodlusted Terran, and you tell them, no, stop doing that. They might, you know, entirely go the opposite direction and be way too passive, especially in a matchup that is generally rewarded with the more actions you do, the more drops you do, so on and so forth. But no, uThermal's totally reading this correctly. Now Bunny, reading uThermal correctly, I suppose, is going to go, okay, well, I guess I can't break you, and I should stop trying, so I'm going to go for a 3rd CC. Not on location, but your 3rd CC is also not on location, so you know what? This isn't going to time out too poorly, but let's be real. While the end result might not be too poor, Bunny's been off of 34 SCVs for a while here, which means, I guess, bright side is that he's going to have more minerals to work off of for his first 2 bases. Is not actually a bright side. uThermal's up 20 supply, but that is mostly in the workers, so Bunny is seriously still threatening uThermal here. uThermal is starting to teeter into that overly defensive. If he can get down the ramp, then he will be fine, but he knows the army's in a concave waiting for him to try that. Even if he siege hops forward his tanks, it can still be dangerous, so he's playing very, very careful. This is opening Bunny up to catching up in the economy, and if he had more SCVs, I'd say that's actually very promising. Maybe if he had 45 SCVs, for instance, but 34 is just really not looking great. Lots of tanks still in those medevacs, something that uThermal's probably guessed. And whether that's to go for an actual doom drop or just to you know, hurriedly drop them in a good location, for instance over here, remains to be seen. Now these Marines are going to be far better upgrades. 221 again, so far ahead of Bunny. The uThermal can start to be a little bit dangerous as long as he's got a decent concave. Actually start poking forward and trying to take decent engagements. Still very similar stuff that we saw last game, but Bunny may be a little bit closer to winning this one. We're bringing it back, I suppose. Scan reveals the army location. uThermal desperately wants to get the sensor tower down in location. And once he has that, he'll feel a lot more confident. He can also bring these Vikings forward to help out in the front lines. Bunny's going to go for it, but he's hitting a bit of an anti-timer perhaps. The upgrades, at least one of them is finished for uThermal. The other one's not quite done. Most of his tanks aren't helping out, and that was the majority of the problem there. uThermal had a decent number of Marines, but Bunny's tanks were helping him. uThermal's tanks, not so much, but production might just went out here. He had 2 tanks held up in the main base for some reason. Actually, he had 3 tanks held up in the main base. It might have been a misrally. He might have been anticipating a doom drop. He now brings them forward to survive longer. He could start to add in Liberators, exactly what uThermal does, as he is absolutely controlling the air. And really, most of what's left over is the tanks. An okay number of Marines to protect them, but really this army is mostly about tanks. Medevacs are going to go for a fake. I mean, it's 100% a fake, but I'm just wondering what it's a fake for. Is that really going to work? Kind of, actually. It kind of does. Okay. All right, then. All right. So that's why you fake the Vikings out. I mean, 5 medevacs for that. That's still a costly investment for Bunny to do, but it might have been worth it. It not just takes out tanks, you know, little supply there. It also takes away the protection of the 3rd CC. These SCVs are not going to grab Onto this for the pair. No, he shouldn't have lost that. He should not have lost that. uThermal, despite how defensive he's been, how much he's tried to read into the situation, might have just lost this game. Certainly has lost the lead here. He's up 20 workers, and Bunny is not really mining efficiently from his third CC, and now he still has the problem of the Liberators and the Vikings and the upgraded Marines, but uThermal definitely should not have lost that third CC. Really nice poise here from Bunny. uThermal still holds on to the lead of the supply, but it's only because of the workers. I would also love for these Vikings to be repaired. Literally, some of these are one tap from dying. One love tap from dying, so I'm not feeling so confident there anymore. Bunny's also seeing this opportunity to perhaps win the air war, or just that he realizes he needs to win the air war to make sure that uThermal doesn't come back in the game. So he's gonna go into his own Vikings very quickly. uThermal goes down to 4. Bunny's almost got his other 2 on the front lines. Just a couple seconds here. uThermal did just lift his main command center, and since it was so much more mined out, it does make a lot of sense. But Bunny has also lifted his command center and is out on a 4 bases, quote unquote. Not a very well protected 4th base, and not really a 4th. I would have loved to see uThermal do a single drop earlier on in the game for sure. Bunny, I think, was kind of careful about not just simply rallying forward with his units. You don't really want to rally forward with Terran units, because in TVT rather, because of the potency of Doom drops and just any amount of drops. But I think there were still some openings that he could have tried testing out. You know, this third base was, I think, open sometimes back when I looked at it. Vikings are being holed up either as a secret or just to stop any drops, which he predicts. Both is a good reason to hold them up there. They come in, snipe that medevac down. It was not a terrible drop because it did take out a tank and like 1 or 2 SCVs, right? But uThermal's now starting to sweat a little bit. In total, he's lost 20 workers, but he's killed 20 workers. Sorry, yeah. So that's why Bunny's still far down, even though he's been trying to remake them bit by bit in the last minute. Liberator will find a 4th command center, but seeing that's an orbital, Bunny should, or uThermal should be able to see that it's not actually a 4th. This attack, though, not going too well as uThermal runs into this. Too many tanks blasting away. Bunny takes game number 2 in a position that he probably wasn't supposed to win from. Probably not. I wonder how this is going to be taken by uThermal. He was so correct for the first, like, minute or 2 of the defense, right? When he had his 3rd CC, when he didn't go down the ramp. I think he was absolutely correct in his call not to take the 3rd base too quickly. But I think he still played overly defensive. Hence, 2020 and all that, I have the God vision, but, you know, he could have played the defensive game with the amount of units he had and done a double drop. And done a quadruple drop full of Marines. Instead, Bunny was able to take full control over the map. And uThermal played a TVT that he is usually not known for. Like, he usually is the one that goes for all the drops, does the dangerous maneuvers, is constantly active on the map, which is important for Terrans in every single matchup, but certainly for TVT. And instead, he was purely defensive, no drops anywhere. And it ended up being the wrong choice. Ended up being the wrong choice for the time he spent so defensive, I guess. I don't think he's watching his replay because he's also kind of scratching his head like, should I have won that one? What happened there? That's a heartbreaker of a TVT. And if you lose the series, then it's going to be a real disappointing result. Close game. Yeah, I was setting up that game as Bunny really having to make a mark. You know, it seemed like uThermal had a really good game plan in game number 1, and it was mostly backed up with just smart decision making and good macro. So I was like, Bunny's got to show us what he can do. And first 8 minutes of the game, it looked like Bunny was going to lose. But he showed his experience perhaps in TVT there. for uThermal. I know I talked about how those brash Terrans, not stereotyping here, making a story where there really isn't one, but yeah, these Terrans that, especially the ones that are usually aggressive, even with the years of experience, I think they still have this weird tendency to maybe flip the opposite direction. And while making what is mostly right calls, kind of get out of their own comfort zone by doing it. And now it's a question of uThermal's mentality, which has unfortunately been kind of his downfall in his years as a pro gamer. There's been times where he legitimately stops playing for a long period. I mean, 3 years ago, I think there was some serious concern that he was going to retire. And then every so often he makes tweets saying that he just doesn't feel like he's playing very well and so on. But he always comes back, and he always comes back when even he least expects it. And I'm really happy to see this for multiple reasons I'll get into in a second. Let's get the scoreboard up here. It's tied up. Oopsie daisy. 1-1 in the lower brackets. It's elimination time. The top right has the red Terran. It is liquid uThermal. In the bottom left is the blue Terran. He is Blazer Bunny. Multiple reasons, right? 1, Bunny has so far done a 1-Rex expand every single game, right? 2, the server. Bunny is probably planning with something like 300 ping to the European server. It's not going to look pretty up against Reaper Micro. And 3, I think this is where uThermal shows his strongest... I was going to be repetitive and say strongest strengths, but it's where he shows his strengths. There we go. I think all of these reasons make this a very good call. It's also on a map that, okay, maybe it is known for its Reaper proxies, and Bunny is specifically scouting the very common location for the Reaper proxy. The way that he's proxied them kind of plays to it, makes it a strength. As Bunny scouts and thinks he's A-okay, he's going to go for 1x expand again, and he's going to be wrong. He's going to be dead. Maybe. We'll see what happens. Now, this is the most that a Reaper can abuse over here, but there are still hop-up spots here along with the ramp. The command center is gonna go down. Oh my god, if he had taken minerals from this mineral patch instead, he would... Oh god, he barely sees it! But it's so late. It is the latest you can really anticipate this. And this is bad news for Bunny, who has not started a second gas geyser. He's not gonna be starting a factory. He should start up a bunker and a supply depot, absolutely. That's exactly what he does. But uThermal has already messed up Bunny's plans, and as long as things aren't a disaster for uThermal, then he can even Mac her out of this. Reaper to Reaper Micro, especially with the ping as consideration, I would give uThermal even without it. Especially with it, I think the Reaper Micro is going to go in uThermal's favor, but, you know, there's the high ground, there's bunkers to worry about, so it's not just purely about the micro. SCVs will have to be killed in this game for uThermal to continue on out, but not that many SCVs. And he does have an exit path. There might be 3 bunkers, but there's not enough things to put in the 3 bunkers. Marine has very consistent damage. The Reaper does go down. Another Marine is on the way, but no factory? Where is it? Oh, there it is. The factory is almost done, but it's almost done. That means it still has to wait for a Hellion to pop out. And uThermal is continuing to build Reapers. He's also continuing to micro this one, so not a lot of mining is being done by Bunny. He can barely afford to start a starport. Which that's usually where you can come back if you do lose too many workers. Maybe you have that faster tech. It's maybe not going to be the case here. This Marine's going to go down, and I think uThermal might have just done it. He's going to save that Reaper just barely, but he does. So much lost mining time for Bunny. He's not going to have a second gas either to really support starport production, and everything seems to be going favorably for uThermal. Sure, he has not cut up in the workers quite yet, but I think this does bode well. A single Helen will not stop this amount of Reapers, but the Reapers are getting awfully low. They one-shot that Helen. It was so damn low. It doesn't get a single shot, not even a half a shot off of those 2 very low Reapers. And once again, uThermal gets out of dodge without losing one. He's up to 5 Reapers, about to be up to 7 Reapers. And this is looking good. How is Bunny going to bring himself back from this one? He could try and counter once the Reapers are all dead, but that's if uThermal lets him kill all of his Reapers. His bunkers are stopping any exit paths from truly happening, but it's really not a lot in the bunker. He could technically still get out of there. He's just going to go for the SCVs instead. The SCVs are being pulled. They have to be pulled to save this one Hellion, as another one's going to try and make its way out, but once again, the bunker is alone. Some of those last few Reapers that are very low in health do not die. Finally, Bunny throws down a command center. Seems to be his choice. I guess it was his... From the get-go, he was planning on getting command center still faster than uThermal, but it's really not that much faster as uThermal starts his own and has his own starport. The Reapers go in from the right side, and even if there was something in the bunker, it wasn't a whole ton. The Hellions go down. More SCVs will go down. They're so weak from earlier pulls anyways. uThermal has done it with the T-Rex. Very nice choice to end the game here. Very abusive choice, yes, I know, but it's also the best one for uThermal. GG. Bunny takes the L.